This Honourable Senate now resumes its sitting. And before we get to the business of the day, take the opportunity to welcome members of the Little People Prep School. Welcome to the Senate this morning. A number of persons from the Department of Government, the University of the West Indies, and of course, guests of Mrs. Donna Scott Motley and Mr. Damien Crawford, who are here to witness their taking of the oath of allegiance this morning. And we do, of course, have a special guest who I will make mention of shortly. I beg your pardon? We note also two members of Parliament who are here to perhaps look at a different side of the legislative process, more civilized side, some may say. Oath of allegiance.
May I invite Mr. Damien Crawford forward, please?
I, Damien Orande Crawford, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Jamaica, and that I will uphold and defend the Constitution and laws of Jamaica, and that I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my responsibilities to the people of Jamaica. So help me God.
Mrs. Donna Marie Scott Motley. In your left hand, in your right hand, it's you're going to.
I, Donna Marie Scott Motley, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Jamaica, that I will uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of Jamaica, and that I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my responsibilities to the people of Jamaica. So help me God.
Minister Charles.
Mr. President, might I first ask your permission to speak from a seat that is not normally my own, and indicate on behalf of this side that it is really a pleasure for us to welcome new and returning senators who we are confident and certain will continue the rigorous debate that we have had in this House, and will certainly fall in line with our high standards that we try to keep as a review chamber. We look forward to the kind of cooperation and coordination that we all seek, and we certainly wish you both all the best throughout your tenure. Thank you.
Senator Knight.
Mr. President, I join in welcoming the two new senators, and I'll be very brief. May I say that I do hope that their tenure on this side will be short-lived.
May I just as well welcome both Senator Scott Motley and Senator Crawford, and we trust that your stay here will be as long as you desire. And we trust that you will enjoy your stay with us and participate. The persons who have left us, Senator Brownburke and Senator Golden, have left their mark here, and we know that you will also. Thank you.
Mr. President and honorable senators, I'm indeed delighted to be back here. I must confess, having a total unfamiliarity with this side, and in fact ended up over the other side this morning, because that's where I have been in the past. Mr. President, I did not swear that oath lightly. It means a lot to me. I do pledge, as leader of opposition business, that I will uphold the dignity of this honorable House. I pledge cordiality, even where we might have disagreements. And I am honored to have been so warmly welcomed by the senators on both sides. It is indeed something that both my colleague, who has been sworn in, we both take it very seriously, and we both make a commitment to the people of Jamaica. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we get on to further business, may I just wish Senator Fraser Binns a very happy birthday today. This Senate is honored today to welcome to our sitting the Poet Laureate of Jamaica, Mrs. Lorna Goodison. She's someone who has dedicated her life, her artistic life, to this country, and has been recognized in this year as being the second Poet Laureate in modern Jamaican history, Mr. Mervyn Morris having been the first. So we welcome here today to this sitting of the Parliament.
Mr. President, I now ask that this sitting of Senate be suspended to allow Mrs. Lorna Goodison, our Poet Laureate 2017 to 2020, to present to us one of her poems to the members of this Honourable Senate.
The question is that the sitting of the Senate be suspended to allow Mrs. Lorna Goodison, Poet Laureate of Jamaica, to present one of her poems to the honourable members of this Senate. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Mrs. Goodison.
Mr. President, so sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Goodis.
I can proceed. Mr. President, members of the Senate, and everybody else, good morning. I'm very honored to be here. And the poem I will read for you is called To Us All Flowers Are Roses. Akampong is a shanty, root Nyamekapon. Appropriate name Akampong, it means warrior or lone one. Akampong is home to bushmasters, bushmasters being Maroons. Maroons dwell in dense places, deep, mountainous, well-sealed, strangers unwelcome, Minasen, Unicom. I love so the names of this place, how they spring brilliant like roses. To us, all flowers are roses. Engage you in flirtation, what is their meaning? Pronunciation, a strong young breeze that just takes these names like blossoms and walls them around, turn and wheel them on the tongue. There are angels in St. Catherine somewhere, and Arawak is a post office in St. Anne. And if the Spaniards hear of this, will they come again in caravels to a post office in suits of mail to inquire after any remaining Arawaks? Nice people, so gentle, peaceful, and hospitable. There's everywhere here. There's Alps and Lapland and Berlin, Armagh, Carrickfergus, Malvern, Rhine, and Calabar. Askanish, where freed slaves went to claim what was left of the Africa within, staging secret woodland ceremonies. Such ceremonies, such dancing, I Kumina, drowned some at Barking Lodge where we hear a cargo of slaves landed free because somebody signed a paper, even as they rode as cargo, shackled on the high seas. So they landed here, were unchanged, and went free. So in some places, there is almost pure Africa. Some of it is lost, though, swept away forever. Maybe at Lethe in Hanover. Lethe springs from the Greek, a river which is a river of oblivion. There is Mount Peace here, and tranquility, and content, and Maypen, Dundee Pen, Bamboo Pen, and for me, Faith's pen, therefore will I write. There is blackness here, which is Sugarland, and they say is named for the ebony of the soil. At a wedding there once, the groom wore cobalt blue, and the young bride cloud white at blackness. But there is blood in the fields of our lives, blood the bright banner flowing over the order of Cain and our history. The Hope River in hot times goes under, but pulses underground, strong enough to rise again and swell to new deep when the May rains fall for certain. There was a surfeit once of swine at Fat Hog Quarter, and somehow Chateau Vert slipped on the twee of our tongue and fell to rise up again as Chateauva. They hung Paul Bogle's body at sea. So there's blood in the sea, especially at Bloody Bay where they punctured balloons of great gray whales. There's Egypt here at Catadupa, a name they spoke first softly to the white falling cataracts of the Nile. There's amity and friendship and Harmony Hall. Stonehenge, Sevens, Doppygate, Wait a Bit, Wild Horses, Tanancy, Time and Patience, Unity. It is holy here, Mount Moses. Dew falls upon Mount Nebo. South of Jordan, Mount Nebo rises to Hola, Mount Zion High. Paradise is found here. From Pisgah we look out and wait a bit. Wild horses, tan and sea, time and patience, unity. For the wounded a doctor's cave, and at Phoenix from burnt ground, new rising. Good hope, the morning's dawn crystalline at Cape Clear, and it is good for brethren and sistren to dwell together in unity upon Mount Pleasant. Dr. Breezes issue from the side of the sea across parishes named for saints. Rivers can be tied together in eights. Mountains are lapis lazuli or sapphire, impossibly blue. and rivers wag their waters, or flow black, or white, or of milk. And the waters of the fish river do contain, and will yield up good eating fish. O heart, when some nights you cannot sleep, for being wondering why you have been charged to keep some things of which you cannot speak, think what release will mean when your name is changed to tranquility. I was born at Liming, Jubilee, on the anniversary of Emancipation Day. I recite these names in a rosary, and I speak them when I pray. For Hearties, which is my Mecca, I, Jamaica. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Poet Laureate, and we look forward to having you back with us in the very near future. I also welcome persons who accompanied you, Mrs. Beverly Lashley, who is a National Librarian, and Abigail Henry, Director of Special Programs at the National Library of Jamaica. Thank you very much for coming. The Senate will now resume its sitting. Oh, you did that already. Excellent. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today is the Auditor General's report on the performance audit of the Transport Authority, regulation of public passenger vehicles, PPVs.
Bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honourable Senate. I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 17th day of October 2017, the House of Representatives agreed to the Senate amendments to the bill entitled An Act to Repeal the Agricultural Credit Board Act, to make new provisions relating to agricultural credit arrangements by transferring certain functions currently with the Agricultural Credit Board to the Registrar of Cooperative Societies, to establish the Agricultural Appeal Tribunal and for connected matters. I also have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 17th day of October 2017, the following bills were passed in the House of Representatives. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Criminal Justice Administration Act and to provide for connected matters, passed with 6 amendments. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Indictments Act, passed with 1 amendment. And a bill entitled An Act to Absolve Certain National Heroes, namely the Right Excellent Sam Sharp, the Right Excellent George William Gordon, the Right Excellent Paul Bogle, and the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey, their supporters, sympathizers, and participants by association, and other freedom fighters from criminal liability arising from participation in the 1760 Tackies or St. Mary Rebellion, the 1831 to 1832 Christmas Rebellion, the 1865 Morant Bay Rebellion, and the 1929 campaign of the People's Political Party, respectively, and to provide for connected matters, passed without amendment. Signed, Pernell P. Charles, CDJP MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, on behalf of the Leader of Government Business, I do signify her willingness to take charge of the 3 last mentioned bills.
A bill shortly entitled the Criminal Justice Administration Amendment Act 2017, read a first time. A bill shortly entitled the Indictments Amendment Act 2017, read a first time. A bill shortly entitled the National Heroes and Other Freedom Fighters, Absolution from Criminal Liability in Respect of Specified Events, Act 2017, read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of the second reading of the bills.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, Questions and answers to questions. I'm sorry. Notices of motions given orally. I'm sorry. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of.
I just have a question that I want to ask Mr. President, because a number of resolutions have been tabled. Certainly, I have 2 resolutions that are on the order paper to be debated, and I would like to get some indication as to whether those resolutions, those that have been tabled by myself and my colleagues on this side, if they will be debated during this legislative year.
Minister?
Mr. President, I'm not in a position to give any specific reply to my colleague senator, but I will note it and ensure that at the next instance, the leader of government business does attend to those matters.
Motions that may be made at the commencement.
Are we at question and answer?
Questions and answers to questions.
Thank you, sir. Again, I note the absence of the Minister of Education, Youth and Information, but there are questions that are outstanding that should have been answered last. You did make some commitment. You did, Mr. President, make some commitment in terms of sending a message to the minister, and I'm wondering if there's any response to your message and to the questions that have been asked, that are standing in my name.
Yeah, I have a correspondence to the effect that Senator Reid, well, it's obviously out of offices, and answers to Senator Fraser Binns' questions on Duncan's Bay, NEPA, will be presented on November the 3rd, 2017, and that the responses to Senator Brown's questions are in the advanced stage of preparation.
It's concerned, Mr. President. How does that fit in with the standing order, which requires that these answers must come within a specified time? Because what we're seeing is that the ministers are stretching out the requirement and setting, I don't know what is the basis of the date being set, for example, to November to answer these questions. I'd not say it have anything to do with an event coming up, but certainly to avoid others drawing the conclusion that they don't want to answer the questions before the 30th of October. Would love to get a sense of what is it that necessitates a November answer as against within the standing order requirements.
Every member of the Senate will recognize that the issue of answering questions is not one, or not answering the questions on a timely basis is not one that is new. And it is certainly something that I will make every effort to try and improve on by speaking to the relevant persons. I can't do no more than that at this point in time. Motions relating to, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business. Senator Brown, we noticed that you were late. Was it by design or accident? Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today this Honourable Senate will be considering the amendments to the Processed Food Act and the Processed Food Regulations. And, Mr. President, In keeping with the government's policy to enhance efficiency in trade and in commerce, a decision was made to take the amendments to the Processed Food Act and the Processed Food Regulation 1959, so as to remove the requirement for export certificates and to facilitate the implementation of the automated system for customs data, which is the ASICUDA. That's a web-based system which is designed to transform the Jamaica Customs Agency into a paperless operation through the use of electronic documents. In 2017, it is the only way for us to advance efficiency. Mr. President, one of the main objectives of the ASICUDA system is to harmonize trade procedure and to reduce trade barriers. Consequently, this objective envisions the incorporation of the Bureau of Standards of Jamaica port-related procedures into the system. And we thank the Bureau and the Customs Agency and all members at the Ministry for the hard work they have done in recognizing and putting in place the necessary framework to advance this paperless operation. Mr. President, in December 2014, the Jamaica Customs Agency commenced the piloting of the export functionalities of the ASICUDA World System, which was subsequently implemented in 2016. And this is a system, let me note for the Senate, that has already been implemented in 90 countries, 72 of which have the same version that we have here in Jamaica. The Jamaica Customs Agency, Mr. President, indicated that it could not incorporate the export certificate component of the Processed Food Act into the ASICUDA system. And both the Jamaica Customs Agency and the Bureau of Standards of Jamaica, having consulted, have jointly recommended the removal of the provisions in the Act relating to the requirement for export certificates. Mr. President, I'll also note that in 2015, the then Executive Director of the Bureau of Standards explained the decision, stating, "There are a number of countries that do not require certification for goods to be imported, yet we were still requiring exports to be certified. This change will allow exports to be certified based on the market access rules that apply in the destination country. It will reduce time and save money." The removal of the export certificates provisions, Mr. President, will shorten the process for the export of processed food. It will constitute a positive step forward towards a more trade facilitatory regime and bring our country further in line with the international best practices which posit a risk-based approach towards production. Mr. President, the Jamaica Customs Agency has taken specific measures to ensure that the end users are equipped with the capacity to use this system. The Jamaica Customs Agency also states that the ASICUDA World has resulted in a greater positive outlook for trading across borders. This paperless approach is necessary. It is necessary for us in Jamaica to maximize efficiency. It promotes greater insights and improvements in our country's trade and economy. That can be achieved and will be achieved through the integration of the ASICUDA World System, particularly based on the exacting transparency that it uses. The bill, therefore, Mr. President, is critical, and it seeks, as I laid out, to make those specific amendments to the Processed Food Act as well as the regulations to give effect to that decision for us to have increased transparency and increased efficiency. Mr. President, to move to the clause-by-clause analysis of the bill, of the amendment. Clause 1 details the short title and the construction. And this clause is very simple. Clause 2 speaks to the amendment of Section 5(1)(c) of the Principal Act. This section provides that no person shall export or sell or have in his possession for export or sale or attempt to export or to sell any prescribed goods that is unwholesome. Yes, sorry. The section was amended, Mr. President, to replace the word export with the word distribute or distribution, as the case may be. The requirement for export certificate has become outdated, as we said, and is of no utility in modern trade practice. Clause 3 speaks to the amendment of Section 8 of the Principal Act, and this section provides that the prescribed food is to be certified as being fit before being exported or sold. The section was amended by deleting the word export wherever it appears and substituting it with the word distribute or distribution, as the case may be. Clause 4 is the amendment of Section 10 of the Principal Act. And this section provides for the powers and duties of the inspector that are appointed for carrying out the provisions of the Act. The section was amended to replace again the word export with the word distribute or distribution. Clause 5, amendment made to Section 12(1)(b) of the Principal Act. This section provides for the power of the minister where the lawful directions of an inspector are not being complied with. The paragraph was amended to replace the word export with the word distribution. This is to allow for the words certification of export to be replaced with the word certification of distribution, as certification of export is no longer applicable. In Clause 6, Mr. President, we see an amendment to Section 13(1)(c)(e) and Roman numeral I of the Principal Act. This section provides for the power of the minister to make regulations, and it was amended to allow for the substitution again of the words export and exportation to be replaced with the words distribute or distribution, as the cases may be. Clause 7 sees to an amendment of Section 14 of the Principal Act, and it provides for the procedure with respect to the regulations relating to standards for the processed food for export. The marginal note was also amended to substitute the word export with the word distribution. Clause 8, Mr. President, relates to the amendment of Section 18 of the Principal Act, and it provides that evidence should be produced in the prosecution of an offense for unwholesome food found in any establishment. This section was amended to allow for the substitution of the word export with the word distribution. Clause 9, Mr. President, speaks to the amendment of the Processed Food General Regulations. A relates to Regulation 11, where the words certificate of export are deleted, and again, because the certificate of export is no longer applicable or required. The Regulation 12 to 16, these regulations are repealed, again, because the certificate of export is no longer applicable or required. And again, in Regulation 21, the reference to every certificate of export is also deleted for the same reason. We move on, Mr. President, to the schedules which constitute and have within them Form B and Form C, which have been deleted from the third schedule. And this was done because the application for export certificate will no longer be a requirement. Additionally, Mr. President, the memorandum of objects and reasons were incorporated in this bill to provide the rationale for the amendments to the Act and to the regulations. A short bill before us, Mr. President, that ends the clause-by-clause analysis, and we open the debate to my colleague senators for their contribution, if it is that they have. And might I just note, Mr. President, that this is a bill which required no amendments in the lower house and which we are pleased to say had the approval of the opposition in the lower house, which understood very well that I would never suggest that, Senator Brown. But it is important, it is very important to remark and to indicate the unity and the harmony and understanding for this requirement for efficiency in these times. That's all right. That ends the opening of debate, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minister.
Mr. President?
Senator Skeffrey.
Yeah, we on this side have no difficulty in supporting this bill. The work indeed started from about 2014, 2015 to improve greater efficiency. And I want to thank the government for bringing the bill now to the Senate so we can ensure the implementation to enhance the greater efficiency in our economy and generally doing business. So we support Senator Charles, as you know, as a team on this side that believe in nationalism. Anything that is good for Jamaica, you can rest assured that we will support it. You can quote me and you can go for Hansard when the time comes. So, Mr. President, a bill of this nature will naturally improve efficiency in our doing business, promote greater trade within nation state, and more important, to reduce the bureaucracy or the red tape or the bundle in the system as we move forward. It will also promote better management and better record keeping, and that's of our old data in the system. And this is all as we seek to go for greater growth and development and to ensure that there's more competitiveness in our business sector and the economy in general. So we support that, and you don't have to be worried today. But as we move forward, while we focus on food processing in the specific aspect of the bill, we must also look at the agricultural sector in general as a great driver for economic growth and job creation for our people. So while we're seeking to bring the technology into the business sector of the agricultural side, we now need to put the technology into production. And we now need to have that technology reaching the farmers. Because if we focus on food processing without a sustainable production, then the food processing plants will have nothing to process in the long run. So it has to be a dual effort and an integrated effort as we move forward. So we support that, and I want to encourage that. So in this production, of course, utilization of our lands and security of many of our farmers remains an issue. And that is why, for example, the leader of opposition is pushing the land reform process because it's critical for sustainability and security and assurance where our farmers are concerned. Also, Mr. President and Senator, we know, for example, irrigation system is critical to our farmers also. So we need to ensure that irrigation systems are set up right across the farming network as we enhance production and get the value added from the agricultural sector. And not just a large irrigation system, but we will have drought areas, for example, in South Manchester, South St. Elizabeth, that end into Clarendon. Drip irrigation can also be a critical area. We also need to have greater access for our farmers, those who want to go into food processing or direct production, access to financial resources at competitive or lower interest rate so they can plan, they can implement and see farming as a genuine business and make a profit from it, whether it is the production or the food processing. In this context, Mr. President, I want to call on the government to look at the role that RADA is really playing in the agriculture sector. Many times when I go out there, farmers ask me, Senator Skeffrey, the D in RADA, what does it stand for? And I say development. They ask me if I'm sure because they think it means distribution. Unfortunately, it has an original mandate. But too often times when you go to the RADA offices, they really focus on a list for fertilizer from the MP or the ministry, some seeds, some black drums and so on. And if you have a rural agricultural development authority, then it must drive the changes in the agricultural sector, the new technology, the new methodologies to inform the farmers so they can make it something profitable and sustainable. So I really believe that we need to revamp the whole operation, not the concept, but the current operation. Because with the best of intention, it is now not currently serving our farmers in the best way. There are too many issues. If you go to the office, and I speak from experience, and you want some information as to how to plant sweet potato, for example, there is not any database there you can readily access as someone new who lacks that knowledge. And therefore you have to rely on the primitive methodologies in the production, and you don't enhance the efficiency and the required heat. So I really think we need to examine the role that it is currently playing in accordance with the original mandate that we want it to play as we move forward. And if we can get that, and also driving the marketing of our goods and products. We talk about food processing. There are many times you have fruits, for example, that just goes to waste. And if this bill talking about food processing, how can the development authority help our farmers to move to that higher level so we can gain some best earnings from the industry? And if you understand, sometime in one parish you have a shortage, and the other one you have a glut. For example, in Manchester, every day friends give me box of pears. You can only eat so much and no more, you can't keep it so long. But when I go to another parish, someone said them buy for $100 for a small one, Mr. President. And I realize that oftentimes it's not probably that production is low, yes, but the critical issue is the distribution, the networking, so farmers can get the best for their product. Now, I'm from Manchester, and I happen to be in a particular parish recently for a particular period of time doing some activities. And yesterday when I was coming over, the amount of breadfruit I got. But when in Manchester, you go to the market to buy a small one at the cost. So you understand that is the flow of information and where the needs are in relation to when the production is taking place. And if we can help our farmers to understand the whole business of marketing and having that database before reaping, so we know where the needs are and we can channel it in that particular way. So these are some of the things we need to look into, and how we can get more young people into agriculture and the food processing so they can look at it as a meaningful means of employment. So, Mr. President, in a nutshell, while we look at the specific amendments to this bill, we need to look at the overall policy in an integrated way so we can have production being where we want it to be, and then those value added that can flow from the agricultural sector to enhance the economic growth and to create employment. So we support this, and the government side, we will support it as we have said before, and we look forward to other type of bills that will lead to efficiency in our doing business as we go for growth that is sustainable so our people can enjoy the good life and make something valuable of their lives as we seek to build a 21st century. Mr. President, with those remarks, may I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Skeffers. Senator Gale.
Mr. President, thank you, sir. Mr. President, let me start by taking this opportunity to welcome the newly appointed senators. And I take note of the fact that they have just taken the vacant seats. And I also, Senator Knight, whilst last week we appreciated your brief stint as leader, I welcome a more attractive looking leader. And it's interesting, Mr. President, because now in this Senate, now in this Senate, we now have on both sides as leaders women, a breakthrough in the gender balance. So we look forward to what they will bring to the table. Mr. President, this particular piece of legislation, a decision has been taken to amend the Processed Food Act and Processed Food General Regulations of far back as 1959 to remove certain requirements and to implement an automated system for customs data, ASICUDA, a system that has been in operation for some time, create a level of transformation. And we're moving, Mr. President, in a new world of work, one that is taken over by technology, a digital revolution, work that now plays an increasingly important role in development. And it's something that we have to embrace, this changing technology. And for workers, it is a new concept where it must not be viewed that jobs are reducing, but more that work is changing and that transformation. And it gives us, Mr. President, an opportunity to improve the way we do things, to be more effective, to be more efficient, to be able to respond to the needs of customers and clients. Some call it a greener economy. And I share the sentiment of a greener economy. Now, Mr. President, this operating in the custom agency, it's very important because it's one of those agencies that requires constant change in order to meet the needs. And this is the move in technology and a digital revolution is something that is effectively demanded in the public sector. That transformation geared towards efficiency and improving of our productivity. Now, you know, in those who have to utilize the services of custom complain about the long duration it takes to attain the level of service that is required. And this move, implementing this system, is effective in making that transformation. And one of the things that, whilst you create that level of effectiveness, especially in the customs department, especially in the area of customs, one of the things it does, Mr. President, is that it minimizes and seeks to eliminate the extent of corruption. You know, once you get efficient, people won't want a situation that you want to beg a blind. Get a move, get a breakthrough. So this move is an effective way of improving the level of efficiency. But once you have this system in place and you're going towards this transformation, you have to prepare the stakeholders. You have to prepare the workers who have to now learn how to adapt to this transformation, utilizing the system and utilizing it effectively. You also have to prepare the stakeholders that are involved, those who utilize the customs, the brokers, the agents, the customers that are there. And as a country, especially in the public sector, If this works, and it works effectively, we must seek to replicate the positive that is derived from it in the entire public sector. And if we are moving towards and we continue to make the demand for public sector transformation, we must be prepared to invest in technology and support the use of technology. And we have to do it as if the world is depending on us to do it. Because there are those who are outside of our borders that depend on this move. So, Mr. President, we have to ensure so that the ASICUDA system works effectively and is sustained. And I understand that there has been, challenges typical with technology. There has been breakdowns, there has been system failures, but we have to get to the stage that once implemented, it becomes effective and it works. On my way here, so one of my members thought that we're coming here to discuss aspect of customs and a piece of the custom legislation. Somebody said to me that, the principal legislation, there's an area of it that has not been looked at for quite some time now. That portion that speaks to the duty-free concession, the $500 that you get as a concession when you travel. That has been there for decades now, for a long time. And it is in my view, Mr. President, that it requires an amendment as part of the tax reform. To increase it. So, Mr. President, I support the memorandum on objects of this piece of legislation, and I sincerely hope that the positives that are derived from it can be replicated in other agencies so that we can transform the way government do business. May it please you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gale. Senator Fraser-Vance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members, for your very kind wishes on my very special day. Because it is my special day, I promise you, sir, that I shall be very short, because there are other matters which will require my attention. Mr. President, I, like my colleagues, wish to give my support to this bill. In fact, Mr. President, I want to start where Senator Gale stopped, and that has to do with the wider reform that is required in the custom agency. The fact remains, Mr. President, that this is just a tiny, though welcome, a tiny improvement on what presently exists. And we believe that for Jamaica to be more competitive, we will require to do fundamental change in our system. The recent or the last publication, Doing Business, shows Jamaica shows Jamaica faring fairly well in terms of our global competitiveness. However, what is in fact required is for us to improve and continue to improve. So, for example, Jamaica has moved up from 75 to 70 in the Global Competitive Report. And this is something that we have been improving over the last 6 years. But the fact remains that we are still behind other Caribbean and Latin American countries. So, for example, in the 2017 Trading Across Borders report, we find that Jamaica was ranked 131 in Latin America and the Caribbean. And in fact, having ranked at 131, it ranked behind 6 other Caribbean countries. And so there is a need for us to improve on our doing business. But notwithstanding, let me say that it's not a critique because we are in support of this bill, but more has to be done. And when we talk about more that must be done, let us, for example, look at the fact that we still remain a paper-based industry. And when one looks at what is required for import and export, so export, we require bill of landing, commercial invoice, export entry, packing list, dock receipt, export license, approval from the relevant ministry, and for CARICOM, a certificate of origin. And we compare that to the documents that are required when we're importing, which includes bill of landing, commercial invoice, import entry, that's the C87, customs release order, a gate pass, packing list, and the tax compliance certificate. And these things are actually hindrances to commercial undertaking. And so as we move forward in making us more competitive and making it easier to do business, these are some of the things that we have to look at. And I hope, Minister, that in very short order, we will see the relevant legislation come into this House where we can make the requisite amendments. The fact remains as well that we still have issues with our standards. And I think it was in September that the United States sought to enforce its regulatory standards. And this affected some of the products coming from Jamaica. Our psychosanitary conditions are not where they ought to be. And I believe that we have been trying, but I wish to find out from you, Minister, what are we doing as a country, as the government, to ensure that we become compliant, that we meet all these standards? We talk about ISO certified. I mean, how many of our exporters are certified, and are they current, and what is the government doing to assist that process? Let me say as well that this is so important because our inability to export will impact on our ability to earn foreign exchange. And we know how that affects the economy. And so I would encourage you, Minister, that as part of the continuum of improvements, that we give more support, particularly to our small exporters, so that they can be certified and they can meet the requisite standard. Mr. President, and it's for that reason that I am so very pleased about the clause 6C. It is not an amendment, Minister, but I wish to highlight that because I believe that the concern that I raised earlier finds some relief in this provision about prescribing grades and standards of purity, composition, quality, quantity, etc. And I ask, therefore, that apart from giving the requisite support, that we also enforce, because that is what we have to do. We're going to have to enforce to ensure that we are compliant. Mr. President, I did say that I will be short, and with those few comments, I lend my support to the bill. I thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Senator Fraser-Binns. Senator Webby.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me first of all add my own warm welcome to Senator Scott Motley and Damian, Senator Crawford, and also a very warm happy birthday, Madam Fraser-Binns, Senator Fraser-Binns. And I'm becoming very impressed in terms of your statistics that you have been quoting in your last two presentations. Mr. President, I'm sure my colleague senators will appreciate that I am extremely delighted to be here speaking about this bill as the CEO of Grace Kennedy. Mr. President, having said that, I rise in support of the amendments to the Processed Food Act and the Processed Food General Regulations 1959 that we are currently debating today. Mr. President, the amendments, as you have heard from both sides, aim to remove the requirement for export certificates to facilitate implementation of ASICUDA. I think it is very clear from our discussion that it is expected that this will remove and will speed up the export process for processed food, facilitate trade, and bring Jamaica closer in line with international best practices regarding production and export. Mr. President, I am one who strongly believes that export is crucial to Jamaica's economic growth and prosperity. It is one of the areas engraved in our National Growth Agenda strategy and Jamaica's Vision 2030 goals. I wear my hat as the chairman of JAMPRO for a minute. And these amendments, Mr. Chairman, fit squarely in our national export strategy. The strategy reinforces the priority given to exports in respect of government's economic growth targets and goes further to define achieving US $2.5 billion in exports by 2020. Mr. President, the government's strategic goals for export is to increase export-led investments, expand export reach globally, and advocate for reductions in barriers to trade. The removal of barriers to trade, which includes the changes that are being discussed here today, is essential to the success in achieving our strategic goals for export. Mr. President, the Trade Facilitation Task Force, which comprises a number of private and public sector stakeholders, was established to implement the commitments made by Jamaica to enhance trade facilitation under the WTO Bali Agreement signed in December 2013. The work of the task force has been focused on streamlining export and import processes. Some examples include the implementation of a single trade economic window using ASICUDA and the port community system as a platform. And two, the reform of the Customs Act and other legislation, such as one we are addressing today. As you heard from my colleague, Senator Gale, ASICUDA is truly a game-changing technology tool that is instrumental to facilitating trade. We need to continue this focus on bringing processes and systems in line with new technologies. We must also be constantly looking at new world technologies and how we can improve ASICUDA on an ongoing basis. Let us not stop here. Mr. President, in researching for this presentation, I reviewed the Statins External Trade Bulletin up to July 2017, and I'd like to share some of the numbers with this Honourable House this morning. It says, Mr. President and colleagues, total exports saw an increase of US $78.8 million, or 11.3% over the same period in 2016. This was driven by increases in the export of alumina, beverages, and mineral fuels. A major part of the non-traditional domestic exports, which earned $324.3 million US dollars, a 28.4% or 71 increase, or a 71.8 million increase when compared to the previous year of 252.6 million. Mr. President, these figures show that we are on the right track. Mr. President, I want to use this opportunity. To congratulate all exporters for achieving this improved performance. Mr. President, it is our responsibility as legislators to ensure that our exporters experience the red carpet treatment to achieve their personal and national objectives. It is our responsibility. I heard my colleague, Senator Fraser Binns, quote the World Bank doing business report. And the latest numbers that we have, Senator, that we are ranked 67 out of 190. And sometimes I'm with my private sector colleague, Senator Scott Motley, and the tone of the discussion is that we are doing well because we're coming from afar away. And while I recognize that we are doing well, well is not good enough. Well is not good enough. Sometimes in Jamaica, we tend to settle for being okay. But if Usain Bolt had settled to being okay, he would not be a world record holder. Or Shelley Ann Fraser, if they were being okay, we as a country need to be saying that we're going to be great. And I'm saying that the private sector, which I'm a part of, the government, we need to set ourselves a target that instead of being 67, we need to be in the top 10 in 5 years and have a plan to do that. Or else other countries are going to be passing us out. Mr. President, having said that, given the levels of growth that our country has seen, if we want to achieve more, we must produce more and become better at getting our goods to external markets. The world is changing fast, and we have no time to procrastinate. We need to act with a sense of urgency, or we are going to fall behind our competitors. At the appropriate time, Mr. President, I would like to speak more about brand Jamaica, which we are not leveraging enough. I support, and I feel very strongly, Mr. President, that if we're going to export more, significant attention has to be placed and resources on our agricultural sector and agro-processing sector, or the numbers that we are speaking about in terms of growth will not happen. And I would like to see a clear plan in terms of how we're going to drive agriculture and how we're going to improve agro-processing, or else we're going to get what I describe as a treadmill. When you go to the UK, Senator Brown, and you go in the market, and you're talking about yam, and they talk about bolt. You have other yams coming from anywhere else in the world, but them using brand Jamaica, Damien. That shouldn't be. We should have a system in place where we have yam and you have the Jamaican sticker and you use that as brand Jamaica. So we have a lot more to discuss. But in closing, Mr. President, I want to again reiterate my support for initiatives that would facilitate export processes, help us to implement our export strategies to the best possible level, and meet and surpass our export targets. Mr. President, I thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Webber. Senator Brown.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President, I too join the colleagues on this side in supporting the bill. I also, Mr. President, wish to join in all the senators who have welcomed to the upper house again the new leader of opposition business, in 1989, Mr. President, she was elected the deputy president of the Senate, and within a few months was pulled by the late Michael Manley, Prime Minister, into the executive. And I think that would have put paid to the deputy, since the deputy can't be a minister or a parliamentary secretary. In respect to Senator Crawford, for whom Senator Bryan was absent for his swearing-in. Senator Crawford sat in the other place. And he, like Senator Motley, earned the confidence of the Prime Minister and was made a member of the executive. And we look forward to sharing that experience, both of them, on this side and for the House, the Senate in general. Mr. President, I couldn't miss the lady in red, whose birthday it is today. My sister, happy birthday. And I'll try to make you leave early. Now to the bill, Mr. President. I want to start where my friend Senator Webby ended. And I know that's not what he meant, but it's what he said. There's a lot to be discussed. I think he really meant there's a lot for us to do. Discussion done, just as other done. There is a lot for us to do, Mr. President, and this bill have our support. Because what it does is confirm what was started and what was implemented several years ago. The Gleaner of January 30th, 2015, a deadline, certificates no longer needed to export some goods. BSJ, Bureau of Standards of Jamaica. So it's not that this government is now wise and is getting us to the red carpet. We were rolling that red carpet out long ago for the private sector. This is what the Gleaner recorded Minister Anthony Hilton, the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, as saying, and I quote, said the removal of the certificate is yet another positive move in the ministry's deliberate approach to improve the ease of doing business by eliminating irrelevant processes, particularly in our import and export processes. So I'm glad for the continuation and the formalizing in the legislation of something that we started and was advancing, because we too believe in growth, development, and job creation. And that was the program we undertook. You may wish to relabel it prosperity, but that doesn't give you the benefit. What brought us some success is the growth matrix, which was developed by the previous government and handed over to the new government. And that growth matrix, which they well recognized, was the basis on which the Economic Council chairman could declare 5 in 4. And if you go back and look at what he said, he recognized that they found projects there and a document pointing out the trajectory of growth. Because let us be clear, we have always on this side been for growth, job creation, and development. And there lies the problem. And let me share where Mr. President, where they have a problem. Dr. Peter Phillips seized with what was being done as the Minister of Finance, indicated that our economy was primed to provide 100,000 jobs in a short period, 5 years or so. The response to that, Senator Arbin Hill, from your no boss, was that was a job scam. Just as what we're hearing here now. It was a job scam. But soon after, as the election approached, Mr. Shaw said, then opposition spokesperson, finance, that he could provide 250,000 jobs. This morning, Mr. President, I was happy to hear Minister Shaw saying that the Chinese company that has bought Alpart is moving out beyond alumina into agriculture. But that's not new. That's what my friend who was here earlier, Minister Paul Weldon, had announced was part of the plan, and that's part of the growth matrix. That was part of the growth matrix. In other words, we were on a path of growth, which is why we did what we did in respect to custom and the removal of the certificate of export. Mr. President, I put that on the table because this bill comes at a time when there's a break in the trend of 9 consecutive quarters of growth. Officially, information is now from Statin that in the first quarter of this fiscal year, our economy contracted. First time over the last 9 quarters. That's a worrying trend. We are told, oh, it's really rain and drought. It's really rain and drought. And I asked the question, whether rain only fall on one man rooftop? In the past, there was rain and drought, but the growth was criticized. Mr. President, there's a saying that the bad workman quarrels with his tool. Now I'm hearing the problem with Jamaica growth is the measurement we use. And we need to change the measurement. And it's strange when things don't go your way. The problem is really the tool. And we need to change the measurement, the way we measure growth. And Mr. President, I don't know if this bill is going to help us to change that measure. But I've heard the same argument in the reverse. In 2006, when the then Prime Minister declared that unemployment was in single digit, we were told, oh, the problem is the measurement. You need to change the measurement. And since then, government has changed at least twice. And no change has taken place in the measurement of unemployment. We need to move beyond the point where we quarrel with our tool when things not looking good. Because you see, Mr. President, this first quarter, fiscal year decline in the economy is, as some have said, really the third quarter, and that we may be in a recession in reality because we have gone more than 2 quarters of negative growth. And that's the concern we have, that this decline, if we don't halt it, if we don't get the policies right, the country could be headed back to where Dr. Phillips had to rescue it from in 2012. Mr. President, the IMF has for the first time since 2013 expressed disappointment with our economic progress. IMF, I will come to that, and I thank you for allowing me to come to it. The IMF, the IMF Chief of Mission for Jamaica, has said that the problem they are disappointed with economic management. It's a serious thing, because the first time since 2013 that comment has been made. Mr. President, let me address this argument of 2015. You see, Senator Matthew Samula, poverty is not something you just plant one day. It is the failure of the policies between 2009 to 2011. It is the failure of those policies that generated that level of poverty. Because let us not fail to recall that in 2007, the poverty rate was in single digit. Let us not forget that. And then the policies of failing IMF tests, the policy of taxing the people, 1 year, 5 tax packages, those accumulated to 20, those accumulated and showed up in the 2015 figures. We make no apology for that. And that is what we set out to change with our growth matrix and our social safety net. So we understand that it wasn't something created in 2015. And if you believe that, you have no clue about economics and economic impact on the people. So that we make that clear. And it is the same way, Mr. President, that we're now hearing that the 5 in 4, which was based on policies they found when they got to government, is no longer a reality. It is now an aspiration. They have no confidence that they're going to achieve 5 in 4. In fact, they hardly even talk about it much. And that's what worries me, because there are signs that we're going in decline. We're going in the wrong direction. Senator Webby, like you, I look at the starting data. That is why when you said starting, I could say up to July. Because, we on this side do our research. And the same data could tell us different things. The same data, for example, could tell us that in agriculture, year to date, January to July, 2016, we were earning $25 million US. In 2017, that's down to 15 million. We're 10 million behind in agriculture. Same data you use, same data I'm using. That's what I'm dealing with too. International merchandise trade that then go to export. So same data, my friend. But there are signs that we're doing better in some areas too. But it's not only better in some. We want it best in all. That's what we want. So agriculture came up as a concern. The Minister of Agriculture recently said we're likely to slip in agriculture in the third quarter. Agriculture, Mr. President, is key to growth in Jamaica. Never said I was opposing what you said. What I'm saying that agriculture is key to growth in Jamaica. When they came the next quarter, they said agriculture grew 28%, and the economy was growing. And people asked, what you planted? Callaloo? Pap chow? Because we were planning and planting so that reaping could take place. But the problem we have is that it's not growing at 28% anymore. It's declining. And then I was surprised, Mr. President, that a couple of Fridays ago, while opening the new Marcus Garvey, the refurbished Marcus Garvey Highway Drive, which is a work started under Omar Davis' ministry. The Prime Minister made a comment to the effect that we're going to rely less on agriculture and more on road building. And I'm kind of saying, that's not what Senator Langmore said when she spoke on the agricultural credit bill. Because agriculture is key to growing the economy, and there's capacity there. For example,
for emphasis.
I don't know why you're trying to disagree.
If you all start to argue amongst yourselves, don't ask for my intervention when it breaks out into a quarrel.
You know, Mr. President, my shoulders are so broad, I've never needed. Mr. President, my shoulders are so broad, I've never needed your protection. Others may. Mr. President, let's look at some of the areas in Aki, in agriculture, where we're falling. Same data, Senator Webby, said that January to July 2016, we're earning $12 million US from Aki export. And this is processed food. This is what the bill is dealing with. This is processed food. But this year, 2017, the same data available to all of us, since it was available to my friend Senator Webby, sure, we're earning only $7 million. A significant fall off. Whatever the reason is, let's not discuss it, let's fix it. Whatever the reason is, let's fix it. Because whatever the reason is, Jamaica is earning less in export. And it's worse than the situation where we're importing 4 times what we're exporting. We're exporting just a quarter of what we're importing. Let me say it again. For every $4 of import, we're only exporting on average $1. So we need to do a lot more in assisting the farmers. And it can't be done by bushing work in St. Mary. It has to be done by putting the farmers to work and assisting them. Mr. President, areas like citrus has shown a decline. Coffee. Senator Webby, we're doing $22 million in coffee, earning from coffee in 2016. This year to date, we're down to 15. We're slipping. And if you ask the coffee farmers, it's going to be worse because the price of coffee to the farmers have dropped. That's not prosperity. That's not prosperity. That's not prosperity. So, Mr. President, it's clear to me that there's room for us to take this processed food sector forward. But it requires that we give support to the farmers, not only at times of by-elections. It also means we must give support to farm roads, not only at the time of by-elections. And this is why I'm so disappointed that the efforts of the late Dr. Winston Green to get the roads in Southeast St. Mary fixed were not responded to positively. And it was only on the by-election being called or about to be announced that we hear road is going to be fixed. And you know what saddens me? You know what saddens me? You know what saddens me? Hear what saddens me? What? No, we're not fighting against him. Dr. Green was advocating for them. What saddens me, Mr. President? Mr. President, what saddens me is that the announcement was made to fix the road to help the farmers to produce goods to meet the processed food. What saddens me is that despite the grand announcement from the Prime Minister, the road has not started. So what we're looking at is public relations, open to convince the people that by sweet words, by sweet talking, they will get benefit. And it will be for the people to judge. I've been there. The road has not started. And it's sad because, again, Senator Webby, it seems they are discussing rather than doing. Mr. President, Senator Fraser Bin spoke to standards. And while the other countries will be looking out for our goods, we must be aware that despite the removal of the need for the certificate of export, it is important that our exporters live up to the highest levels of standards. Senator Webby, you're well aware of what such a failing can do. We have seen cases of people coming into Jamaica and producing things in an environment that we would not be happy with. We need to police those and make sure they live up to the high standard. Mr. President, let us take, and Damien, don't beat me up for this, let us take sleep and mark that. The case of the corned beef scandal in Brazil is a sign of what can happen if our exporters become complacent and drop standard. And I was so proud when my friend Senator Webby, I was so proud when he said it. And he has said recently, they believe it is feasible. And I applaud you, my friend. So you see, we're not disagreeing. We're not disagreeing. We're just urging the government to pay respect and regard to what they found, what was left there. It's also a warning, Mr. President. It's also a warning that we must stop berating each other. When Mr. Shaw spoke about growth being anemic, I would be happy if he could do anything other than lead our economy in decline. How do I do it? By telling the truth. And the truth, which is absolute. How I do it is not going to Manchester. How I do it is not going to Manchester and tell people I wasn't fully briefed on the prison deal. How we do it is not to tell people that I opposed Zosa when we supported it in this chamber and from this seat. So that's the truth we're talking about. And that's what this country requires of us as we move forward to improve the agro-industry sector, that we be truthful, we be full, and we give support to the farmers wholeheartedly. It is not enough to do it only at election time. One day bellyful will not bring us the economic growth and development we need. With that, Mr. President, we support this bill. It is our work. We started it, we implemented it, and what they're doing today, and we're happy to do it, is to formalize what started a couple of years ago. I now leave the floor for Senator Matthew Samuda to speak his truth. Mr. President.
Not speaking to the
Look like Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown. Minister?
Mr. President, might I just start by thanking my colleague senators, all of them, for the contributions today. I believe that all of the senators, even including Senator Brown, who despite his inability to remove himself from innate politicization, has supported the bill. I note, Mr. President, that there is a clear understanding of the need for us as an administration, as a country, to not see this bill, the Processed Food Amendment, and also the Agricultural Credit Union Bill, and any other activity in isolation of the very comprehensive effort of the government to modernize and to drive forward the agricultural sector. And so let me make it very clear that, as has been stated, the concern, this bill is not expected to be a wholesome solution, but correctly, Senator Skeffrey, it is advancing us, and it must do so in accordance with that framework that you have spoken of. And I can indicate, Mr. President, that just recently, for instance, we saw where, I believe it is on October 17th, Minister Hutchinson launched the Agricultural Push Start Program in Guy's aimed at increasing production of Irish potatoes, onions, and Scotch bonnet peppers. We also note that the Bureau of Standards has launched its newly refurbished and upgraded laboratories, also October of this year, which ensures that we can test in line with global standards and be assured of the results that can hold scrutiny, international scrutiny, that is. Mr. President, I also indicate that as we move forward, it should be understood that this is part of the World Bank Public Sector Transformation Project Initiative, and that the reform includes, Senator Brown, training of agencies which deal with trade and border control. And as Senator Binns had indicated as a concern, the sensitization of the exporters and the importers. The intention is to reduce the barriers to trade and to create greater efficiency. So all of the concerns are noted, and I make reference to these specific examples because it is the comprehensive approach that we are trying to move forward with in relation to modernizing and advancing the agricultural sector. Mr. President, in that regard, might I ask that we have the bill read a second time?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Processed Food Act and the Processed Food General Regulations 1959. Read a second time.
The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole, Senate, to consider the bill clause by clause. Clause 1. Thank you very much, Senator Hill. I put clause 1 of the bill. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. Minister, do you have any amendments to?
No amendments.
Clauses
Mr. Chairman.
1 to 9?
There are no amendments to any clauses, so.
Okay. With your leader? I put clauses. Thank you. I put clauses 1 to 9. Those in favor?
Aye.
Against? The ayes have it. I put the schedule of the bill. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment.
Mr. President, I now ask that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Processed Food Act and the Processed Food General Regulations 1959 read a third time and passed.
Thank you very much. Minister?
Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business in the Senate today, and I ask that we suspend until a date to be fixed. Adjourn, rather, till a date to be fixed.
Thank you very much, Minister. It was remiss of me at an earlier point in time to bring to the attention of this Senate the passing of Ms. Marjorie Taylor, who was a member of Parliament, I think, for East Kingston and Port Royal, and also a member of the Senate from 89 to 93, and 92, and someone who I had the privilege of meeting on a number of occasions. I don't know if any member may wish to say something. Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. I had the great honor of serving with Ambassador Marjorie Taylor. And I deeply regret her passing, even though I know that passing is inevitable. She was not well. She was suffering. I had seen her quite recently. And although still her radiant self, you would have to tell her who you were so that she could acknowledge you. She served this country in so many different capacities, and therefore epitomized to all of us what service truly is. She was a councillor in the East Kingston and Port Royal constituency, and then she became a senator. You would have thought that that would have been enough for Marjorie, but if you knew Marjorie, you knew she was literally larger than life. And she went on to become a member of Parliament when our esteemed Michael Manley retired. I think that a position which she enjoyed the most was when she was made Ambassador for Children. And that indeed is, in my view, what led to the establishment of the Office of the Children's Advocate. And the remarkable strides which she made for children's rights will go down, will be documented. It is part of her legacy. So as unprepared as I was for this occasion, I can say that she was an esteemed colleague, but more significantly, she was a woman of stature, a woman of great compassion, and a woman who should be a role model, not just for women, but for those who wish to serve their country. May her soul rest in peace.
Mr. President, might I join with my colleague, Senator, in reflecting and indicating our sincere condolences and respect for the contribution of former Senator Taylor, as she, in her time, was able to make a significant impact, not only to the nation, but in particular to our children. We will forever be grateful for her strident and persistent advocacy with regards to children across our country. And I do know, being a former prosecutor myself and having interaction with those agencies, that she certainly did have a significant impact on not just the commencement, but on their strident effort to continue to raise standards and to always reevaluate themselves to ensure that they're providing the necessary services to our children. We are grateful for her service, and we thank her.
Thank you, Leader and Minister Charles. I'm sorry, you wish to say something, Senator Morris?
Mr. President, members, I do rise to pay my tribute to Ambassador Marjorie Taylor, somebody who I knew very well from being a member of the said political organization of which we have served for many years. And Mr. President, Ambassador Marjorie Taylor was a very committed individual to the people that she represented, very committed to the country that she served. And Senator Scott Motley mentioned her role in terms of the development of the children's advocacy, but also the role that she played in terms of the development of the Child Care and Protection Act, which was and has played a pivotal role in terms of protecting the interest of our children. But my fondest memories of Ambassador Taylor is in the political realm, because those of us who, as young persons, grew up in the organization, grew to know Marjorie as a strong advocate and a defender of our political organization. And I can recall, Mr. President, in 2002, when we were facing a national election, and at a particular point in time, we had a gathering, and there was a poll that came out, and individuals were very much concerned about the polls. And there was a level of despondency at the time because of the nature of the poll. And Ambassador Marjorie Taylor stood up in the meeting and she said that we must all recognize that a poll is a snapshot, not a video. And that lifted the spirit of every single member in the room and caused us to go out in the field and work and march to victory. And so we are not deterred, or we are not fazed by polls, because we know that, especially when they are fake. But, Madam, Mr. President, on a serious note, she was a shrewd political tactician. She was an individual who understood the political landscape of Jamaica. And certainly, we on this side, we are going to miss a dear comrade. We are going to miss a dear friend. And we want to say to all her families, all her friends, that the life that Marjorie lived is one that we can all be proud of, and we should ensure that her legacy is cherished and preserved. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Morris. Senator Knight.
Mr. President, under normal circumstances, I would not speak at all. And let me just say, however, that everything that has been said so far, I endorse. And I'm placed in some kind of difficulty because when the leader spoke, she said things that I had planned to say. And then I said, well, fine. There's something I'm going to say that no one else will have said. And then, erroneously, I caused Senator Floyd Morris to speak before me because I was present when she spoke about the snapshot and not the video.
Right.
Very earthy person, beautiful individual, affable, at all times pleasant. I knew her very well. And Marjorie would say, I heard the others speak. And KD was there, and KD never said a word. So I am speaking from the heart to say that I truly loved Marjorie Taylor as an individual. We had a beautiful relationship over the years. And there is one thing now I can say that no one else here knows. And it is this, that Floyd spoke to her being the committed party person. Well, it was in a campaign for a high office in the party. And also it was a time when we were voting at an NEC for members of the executive. And then some of you may know, on this side we know, we have a slate. And you vote for your slate. Mm-hmm. Well, the slate that I was connected with did not have Marjorie Taylor on it. And I said to my friends, my colleagues, I said, look here, I have to vote for Marjorie. And I asked them to release me from the slate to allow me to vote for Marjorie. And they did. And I voted for Marjorie Taylor. And I voted for Marjorie Taylor because of the person I found her to have been. I would have been most uncomfortable if I did not do what I could to cause her to become a member of the executive of the People's National Party, because we gained a lot from her experience, from her commitment, and her shrewd interventions. And so I say, I saw her just 2 Sundays before she died at an NEC in Highgate. And I was able to walk over to her, bend over, hug her, and kiss her on the cheeks. And she smiled as I did that. I will remember that. So I say, Marjorie, my dear, may your soul rest in peace, and light perpetual shine upon you.
Thank you, Senator Knight. I certainly echo the sentiments expressed by all of my colleagues. I had occasion to know Marjorie because there was at a time when she lived close to where my parents were at Shar Drive, and I had occasion to see her on many, many occasions and discuss all manners of political events, and always a gentle and pleasant soul, never a bitter moment. So I ask the Senate to rise and observe a moment's silence in honor of our fallen Senator, Marjorie Taylor. The question is the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. This Honourable Senate now stands adjourned.